Let's be honest. Culture has become one of those leadership buzzwords everybody loves to say, but few actually understand. I hear leaders talk about improving culture the same way that we talk about getting in shape. It's lots of talk with very little clarity. And here's the truth. If we can't define it, how can we lead it? So in this episode, I'm going to break down what culture really is and how it forms, and then how to lead it. Because until you understand this, you're not leading a culture, you're just managing the chaos. This is the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast, and I'm your host, John Espinosa. I help business owners hire and retain their top talent, and we do that through building high-performance teams. And one of the ways I'm a victim of this, so when I say we, I truly do mean we, because I throw around the word culture sometimes, improving culture, establishing culture. And for the most part, it is just like I'm going to go work out, or I'm working out to get healthy. What does that look like? And so the what is the important piece. Why culture? I know everybody listening to this podcast understands why we need culture within our organizations. And today I'm going to dig into some statistics because it's important for us to understand why culture is the foundation. It's not why, really. It's what makes culture the foundation. The reason why I thought this was very timely, I was in a leadership conference and there was the word culture thrown around. Even during the breaks, leaders would talk and I'd be involved in conversations and they'd ask, okay, what is your culture? Like, what is that? Is it a mission statement? Are they your values? So there was a lot of misunderstanding. And this episode is going to be really for those leaders that I'm not saying you don't understand what culture is, but there is a disconnect. And again, getting into the statistics, and I've gotten several emails, we'll do some Harvard Business Review stats, some Gallup stuff. So I read a lot, and culture is one of those disconnects between upper level management, senior level leaders, and the frontline leaders or managers and the workforce. And why is that? Well, you're going to want to stick with us until the very end because we're going to break down what all that is. I took 4 pages of notes. I normally do 2 pages of notes for just talking points and things that I want to discuss, but today I wanted to add in those statistics in there, and they're alarming. I looked at these and I was like, really? And so I went out and I fact checked them, but I think the important takeaway is culture is not words, and that's what I want to dig into first for this episode. It's not just words. We think culture is our mission statement or the values that senior leaders have come up with for our organization. And I understand that's important. A mission statement, vision statement, values, those are important things to have in any organization. I'm not discrediting those, but that's not our culture. That's not our culture. Our culture for me, and I wanted to read this verbatim because this is what I looked up Webster Dictionary. This is the Oxford Language Dictionary. Culture as a noun is defined as the arts or other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. And I'm reading that verbatim for a reason because I'm just like, what is going on? If I read that definition, I don't understand what culture is. The second definition, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. So, all right, we're getting down to really what I believe culture is. And then the verb culture is to maintain in conditions of suitable for growth, right? Maintain, whether that's our homeopathic environment or our work environments, suitable for growth. And all 3 of those, I still don't have a very good, really definition. So today, we're going to break that down. And the reason I wanted to start with is not just words, is because a lot of times you ask leaders what their culture is and they recite their mission statement or they recite the values. And even those values like trust or vulnerability, they're still words. And when you use words to define, what something really is a being, culture for me is our being. And I wrote this down. It's our daily emotional experience. And when I really talk about an emotional experience, that's hard to put words around. So what are we going to do here? Because, you can have values, but do people really feel culture? And they do it through a couple different ways. They feel culture through how they're treated. How are you treating them? And we're going to break down, some applications, because this is very practical. We're not going to stay up into the philosophical means, so don't worry. I'm going to give you some things that you're going to be able to take away, that you're going to be able to implement. Culture is about how decisions are being made. And then last I wrote down, and really the most important thing, it's how you show up. How you show up as a leader, how you show up as a business owner, how you show up as a team lead, whatever, as an employee, right? Because I'm talking to everybody here that's part of a culture. It's how you show up. And we know a lot of things about culture. We know when it's working. Studies have shown that when you have a good culture, productivity is increased, right? The numbers look really good. Employee engagement is increased. So we can measure employee engagement. There's several surveys out there that measure employee engagement. Gallup has one. Other things that you see is retention is up, right? You have less turnover when you have a great culture. And for me, one of the things that hit me pretty hard, and I knew kind of this working with organizations, but I didn't have a number, and this is out of the Harvard Business Review. 70% of employees state that their frontline manager has a direct impact on their employee engagement. And remember earlier I said employee engagement is a sign, increased employee engagement is a sign of a great culture. Everyone, a quick break in the episode today. Are you struggling to find and keep the right employees? You're not alone. High turnover drains time, money, and morale, leaving us frustrated, overwhelmed, and feeling like we have to settle for less. I understand how tough hiring can be because I've lived it. And with over 21 years of building high-performance teams, I know how to turn hiring challenges into lasting employee success. Through my proven lead framework, we're going to analyze your processes, design a personalized strategy, and implement solutions that create confident and long-term results. Don't let turnover hold you back. Choosing this program is that first step towards a thriving workplace. Enroll today at thejohnespinosa.com and build the team you deserve. Imagine a team that works seamlessly together, or keep facing the same costly cycle of turnover. The choice is yours. Now back to our episode. So if we know that the frontline managers, the frontline leaders of our organizations have the most impact on employee engagement, which in turn has the most impact in culture, who should we spend time training? Who should we spend time educating? Those individuals. But what I found, we don't do a good job of relaying the things that are happening in the executive boardrooms or maybe at a higher level down to the frontline leader. And that's where the disconnect happens. So some things that I feel are very important for us to begin to have conversations about are things like, or questions really, that ask employees, what does it feel like to work here? Because remember, culture is a daily emotional experience. And we don't like to talk about feelings a lot when we're at work, even though we have feelings about our work. Doesn't make any sense. But this is a great question. This is going to unlock all of those things that we want to know, whether you're a middle manager or executive leader, and especially our frontline leaders out there, or our team leads, or if you're in charge of a team. What does it feel like to be part of this team? What does it feel like to work for this organization? What does it feel like to work for this company? Use the word feel, and then allow that person to explain. One of the other things that I feel are important is for us to identify where we're incongruent. And this goes back to the values. So we have values in an organization, or you should have values, and those values are made up of words, again, trust, accountability. But what does that mean? How do we operationalize? Brené Brown talks about operationalizing those values. So behaviors that are for and against. And when we're incongruent, that's when people get confused. So here, what I want you to do for an application is identify your values and then 2 behaviors that contradict. What are you doing to contradict? And if you're not, great, good for you. Continue listening because I got more. But if there are behaviors, 2 behaviors that are contradicting to the values of your organization, identify those and then get back into congruency. So we've understand that culture is not what you say. It's about the experience that we create as leaders. But now what I want to talk about is that consistency piece. In culture, and I talked a lot to a lot of leaders, the ones that have great cultures, it all boils down to consistency. They use a lot of words and they say a lot of things, but what I've boiled it down to is consistency here. It doesn't come from, again, a document that HR hands you when you go sign your contract or whatever that looks like. It comes from the leadership consistency. And so people don't trust what you preach. They trust what you practice. They trust what your actions are, how you show up, and then how consistently you maintain those actions. And we can get into habits, and we can get into actions and mindset and, think, do, be. But for the most part, it's the consistency piece that allows us as leaders to establish the culture and maintain that culture that we want and that people can feel. So inconsistent leadership, we've talked a lot about that. We've talked about that. What that does is it just creates chaos. It creates confusion. If you show up and you're all about your employees one day, and the next day you don't want anything to do with them, your door's shut, you got a do not disturb sign on there, would that confuse you? Yep, that would confuse me. And we'll talk about a mirror test here in a little bit. But one thing that statistic that I want, this one really hit me hard because it goes back to that disconnect. This is from a Harvard Business Review again, that the 85% of surveyed upper management, upper leadership, said that they were living their culture every single day. Conversely, opposite of that, it dropped to 15% of employees and frontline managers who said that they were living their culture every day. 85% to 15%. So I got to think, why is this such a big disconnect? A lot of times when I work with organizations, when I work with businesses, the ones in the room that are identifying mission statements and visions and strategic plans and values, they're the senior leaders. So people will support what they help create. So that 85%, yeah, I get it. The 15%, that was the one that was alarming because I'm like, okay, even with as you cascade communication down, through the organization, where is the disconnect? So it's over a 70% drop in I understand or I'm living my culture every day. That's a significant number to me. And that's where we can make up. That's our bread and butter as leaders, as frontline leaders. How do we close that gap? So one of the applications that I use is, and it's really a question here, 2 things. One, would I want to be led the way that I'm leading right now? And I even begin to think about this because as a dad, would I want to be parented as I'm parenting right now? And it forces us to really stop. It forces us to just stop using the word because I said so, or you wouldn't understand. And it forces us to take a deep look into what I really want to be treated the way that I'm treating my team, my employees, my peers right now. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It is for me. But if we continue to show up and we ask ourselves, would I want to be led the way that I'm leading right now? It's going to change our daily practices, and it's going to allow us to build that consistency and not miss 2 days in a row. The other application here and it's really just a statement, you set the tone as a leader, but your team, your employees, your people, they're going to determine if it's the norm. They're going to determine it's part of the culture, if it's part of the fabric, not you. You're going to continue to show up to set that norm, and only time will tell if it becomes part of your culture. So this takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't do it in a week. You can't do it in 2 weeks. It really does take some time for people to settle in and think about, this is part of my daily experience, my emotional experience at work. John shows up. He believes in me. He allows me to share, my feedback. We communicate openly. We don't always disagree or agree. I'm not saying that it's kumbaya and we're all agreeing on things. That's not what culture is, remember. It's not words. It's not one type of action. It's the culmination. It's the combination of everything that makes up that emotional daily experience. So that one, great way. In order for us to create that norm, we have to create a culture that sustains us, that is bigger than we are. And that is no easy task as a business owner and as a leader, because if culture goes away whenever we step out, whenever we're gone on vacation or at a business meeting, that's not really what culture is. One thing, we can't enforce it. People are like, I'm just going to communicate. That is enforcement. Whether you're being open about it, that's enforcement of culture. Culture, again, is this emotional, living organism, you can think about it, in our businesses, in our teams. And we want to put our arms around it. It's kind of like a bronco. We want to, get it saddled, and it can't be saddled. And it's hard to rationalize that because a lot of times we want to break things down. And this is one of those gray areas. And I'm just going to be honest. It took me a long time to understand that because I'm like, all right, there has to be something here between all these companies and businesses and teams that I've worked with. What is it? And that's why I've just settled on consistency. And consistency can look different for one organization or another organization or from one team to another team. But what I know and what I found out is that consistency, that helps you begin to at least start to identify what it looks like. And then from there, we can go in and we can say, okay, let's do more of that. Let's model more of that. Let's reinforce more of that. See where I'm going? So here, great teams, we know, have excellent cultures. And in those teams, this is something else that I've observed. They have these cultural guardians. I believe in, a higher power, whatever you believe in out there. I'm not preaching to you, but I think that there are guardian angels. Each one of us has a guardian angel. And I came up with this concept of culture guardians because they guard the culture. They keep everybody accountable and they are living the culture even when somebody is not looking. That's when you know you're doing something right. So for me, one of the things that I love to encourage is, all right, who are my cultural guardians? Who are the ones that are going to live, breathe, consistently show up? They're going to model, right? They're not going to preach. They're going to practice. Who are those individuals? And then let's pour into them. And then let that energy overflow into others. Focus on the strengths. Let that energy flow into others. And one thing, again, a statistic that I found on this one is strong cultures have lower turnover. They have lower incident rates. And they have lower grievances. If you're in a bargaining unit environment, there's lower grievances by 30%. 30% lower turnover, 30% less grievances, and 30%, overall incident rates. That's a huge hit to the pocketbook because turnover costs you money, 1.5 times that individual salary. Grievances cost you time and money if you go to litigation. Incidents, whether they're safety incidents or maybe it's just a personal conflict, cost you time and possibly an HR consultation. So each one of those, if you can reduce that by 30%, that's a significant impact to your organization. And we're not just doing it for money, saving money. You're not going to create culture because if you're doing that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. What we're doing is we're creating culture to prevent some of these underlying things from coming to the surface, having those conversations, showing up consistently, doing all the things that we like to just put into words, but we don't like to follow up in actions. So one application here is start the cultural conversation with your next cultural guardian, and that's your next new hire. During the onboarding process, show them what looks right. Model that. Imagine if you got hired into an organization and you got to, I see a lot of companies, they have one-on-ones with senior leaders for the new hires. And they get in front of that, new hire as a senior leader, and it's more about them. They turn into the most interested or most interesting person, not the most interested person. That first impression is going to be like, well, I know a lot about them, but they don't know a lot about me as a new hire. How do I see that congruent? Right off the bat, you've set a precedent. And that precedent is, I'm just here to work. So it starts with onboarding. That's how we make it part. That's our first opportunity to begin to lead with consistency, begin to model the clarity, and reinforce what matters in our organizations. That's how we build culture. We just don't work it in. They believe in it right from the get-go. So there's a lot that we talked about today. I know that you found at least one thing that you can take away from our conversation, but I want to leave you with this. Culture isn't a program. It's not about free snacks or cool office or that fancy mission statement that's plastered on every wall. It's the living reflection of our leadership, and it's multiplied through our teams, through our people, through our businesses, and through our organizations. So let's stop calling it culture until you understand what it really is. Because it's not what you write, it's what we reinforce. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone on the next episode. Bye-bye.